In this video, we're going to be looking at how to use multipliers to calculate percentages. Okay, so first of all, we need to draw some attention to a link here between increasing by a certain amount and multiplying by a certain amount. This is going to be equivalent, as you're going to see now. So first of all, let's just look at, if we start with £300, if I was increasing it by, let's just say 50%. Now, obviously 50% of 300 is 150. So if I increase it by 50%, I'm going to have 450. Now, that is exactly the same thing as doing 300 multiplied by 1.5. These things have an equivalent relationship. So increasing by 50% is the same as multiplying by 1.5. Now, if I was to decrease this by 1%, so 1% would be £3, so decreasing would give me £297. That would turn out to be the same thing as multiplying by 0.99. That also is £297. So there's a clear link here between this increasing and decreasing by a percentage and multiplying by given numbers. So that's the focus of this lesson, looking at that relationship. Now, if we're going to increase by 15%, then, well, our number, if it's going to be an increase, is going to be bigger than 1, because increasing is that obviously it must be multiplied by bigger than 1. So, and if I times by 2, then that's going to be doubling, isn't it? That's going to be increasing by 100%. So I can say that my number is definitely going to be between 1 and 2. And of course, increasing by 15% is the same thing as finding 115% of a number. So it's the same thing as timesing by 1.15. Increasing by 78% is a bit like finding 178% of a number. So I multiply by 1.78. And increasing by 6% would be like increasing by a number by 106%. And that would be multiplying by 1.06. So that's in essence what we're doing here. We're just looking at that increase and thinking of it in a different terms. That's equivalent to 106% of a number. Be careful not to write 1.6 as well, which would be an increase of 60%. Okay. Now, if we increase by 98%, we're going to be almost doubling something. We're multiplying by 1.98. So let's just start working out some of these now. So 700 times 1.98 is going to give us 1386. That's what we expect to see there, not quite doubling up to 1,400. Increasing by 100% though is doubling something, so it's going to have to be multiplying by 2, which is of course 1400. And if we go even further than that, increasing by 134%, that's equivalent to finding 234% of a number. So multiplying by 2.34. So let's work that out. 700 multiplied by 2.34 is 1,638. Now, we can keep going with this and extend it further and further and further. So let's just look again. So increasing by 170%, well, that's going to be more than doubling it, which is an increase of 100, excuse me. So it's going to be 2.7. Increasing by 204 is 3.04. Increasing by 245 is 3.45. Now, decreasing is a little differently. If we're decreasing by 1%, then we're finding 99% of the original number, if the original number was worth 100%. So in this case, we're timesing by 0.99. If we're decreasing, we're always going to be multiplying by a number less than 1. So if we work out 700 times 0.99, we can see a decrease of 1% is 693. Decreasing by 5% would be multiplying by 0.95, because decreasing by 5% is the same thing as finding 95% of the original number. So 700 times 0.95 is 665. Now if I wanted to decrease by 25%, I'm finding 75% of the original number. So I'm multiplying by 0.75, which is 525. Okay, so finally, if we decrease by 70%, that means we're left with 30% of the original. We're timesing by 0.3, so 700 times 0.3 is 210. By the way, I perhaps should, for your understanding's benefit, write 30 for 30%, but it's equivalent to 0.3. Decreasing by 84% is like timesing something by 0.16, because a decrease of 84 is like finding 6% of the, 16% of the original number, which is 112. And finally, a decrease of 91% will just leave us with 9%. So 0.09 would be our multiplier for this question, which would leave us with just 63 as our answer. Okay, that's all you need now to access the questions. Good luck.